Welcome to Warblog. This is a news video. I've done a few of these odd videos recently where it's sort of not been just a game. But I've had this for a while. Obviously you can donate to my channel. I mean, it's one of these things that no one donates. You know. But I noticed that the Patreon thing, and I don't know really much about Patreon, it sort of didn't look like it was working. I actually googled it up and someone said it seems to be okay, but apparently, I mean, it used to be okay, and then I did something and then something happened, and I had to sort of finish my profile or something and resubmit it, but I've now sort of done that. So when you click on it, instead of seeing this Patreon isn't supporting any creators at the moment, that's the message I was getting. When you click on this, you will now see my Patreon page with my 0 patrons and 0% per month. Now I'm opting to share how much I'm earning because it doesn't matter. I have a $5 tier. If you pay $5 per month, you can request a battle each month that you want doing next. So you can't just do something that doesn't exist, you know, like Space Orcs versus Gandalf, or you know, Rommel versus Moby Dick. But you know, if it fits in with the theme, and you know, you're not just being silly, you know, like the Western Front or something. You know, I mean, small battles. As long as it's doable, basically that's my tier. And I just thought of that. I mean, to be quite honest, I'm not that fussed. To be quite honest, I'd rather not take requests, but it seemed to require having tiers. So anyway, you can pay as much as you want. I mean, I say that, you know, in knowledge that I don't ever expect anyone to pay me on Patreon. But it would be nice. In theory, it does. I mean, the reason I'm sort of doing this and looking at this is because I was just looking up, what does it mean? This Patreon isn't supporting any creators at the moment. And, you know, basically, there isn't actually a simple answer to that. It doesn't say on the internet that's what's happening. I just had to sort of figure it out that my profile wasn't actually complete. When I signed in, it says your profile's not complete. And I had to go through quite a few steps to actually complete it. And I thought it was complete. It's been there for over a year. I didn't realise, you know, I just thought that no one liked, you know, no one wanted to give me money. But anyway, that was not really the sort of first thing that I looked at. I looked at No One Makes a Living. It's an article called No One Makes a Living on Patreon. And if you Google that, you'll find the article. It's an interesting article. I didn't read it. It's too many words. You know, but it's 2% is the percentage of Patreon creators who earn more than the federal minimum wage through their site, and it sort of goes on to, you know, state that it's a huge sort of scam. But it also points out that it's you know, some people are earning quite a lot, but it also points out that they don't really have a big problem when they float their business. I mean, I was reading it. I don't think I really want to sort of find the time. Let me just see if I can valuation. It did state in there basically that, you know, Patreon is sort of worth millions of dollars. I'm sorry, I'm just reading it, so I sort of want to, you know, it's talking about how many patrons there are. I don't know, I can't find it. it doesn't really matter. The point is, I've been, these things. How can it be worth, stock market valuations? I mean, Patreon stock market value. Patreon stock market value. It's saying something like 60. It's worth $60 million. I'm having a terrible time here. Sort of. Patreon started an invite-only annual convention last year. Okay. So, it's talking about people that earn lots of. Yeah, even if creators are struggling to make money, investors see Patreon as a gold mine. In September, presumably 2017, Patreon announced a $60 million investment from venture capital firms, bringing its total funding to $107 million, according to Crunchbase. And the sort of thing is, I've yet to see anything, on the internet generate any money, and it's like, I don't know. I enjoy doing this. I enjoy doing Warblog, and so it's not. I get the feeling that there are a lot of people out there who think, right, I want to earn some money, and they think of something. I come the other way, and I created a site. Well, basically, a little bit of my background is that I just wanted to create a website that would basically cover modern war. What I wanted to put the focus on was sort of like essentially detailing modern war, but with a sort of focus on the standing army. So somehow you would have, and I had a vector graphic map of the world, and then you would have a fairly comprehensive list of, say, each standing army. For example, the Chinese army obviously was pretty big, the Korean army, the Bulgarian army, or whatever, and you would get an idea, and then you'd be able to sort of, you would be able to read the latest news about that nation state, and then you'd be able to. I wanted to sort of make it so that you could start asking questions. That's what I wanted to sort of do. Is sort of not just a news site, so you could sort of go there and you could look at the military history of a country. And I only profiled Somalia, just for no reason whatsoever. But I sort of started on that, and it wasn't really working out. And then I started to think about putting this together in sort of hexes to make that sort of. To be quite honest, and this is the nature of the video, I just wanted to talk about Patreon here, but basically that process, it just went this way, and I quite often say I can't believe the direction it's actually gone in. Not in my wildest dreams could I have figured that I could actually make something that works so well. And there are a lot of people out there might say, "Oh, yeah, it's pretty boring," whatever. I mean, it was never designed to be a sort of a game, and the fact that it is a miracle. It was really just sort of a website so that you could go there and, for example, I mean, the Syrian war is obviously what's happening at the moment, Yemen, and so you could go there and you could read about it, or you could sort of touch base, and not sort of like in an ongoing sense, like a traditional news outlet where they would actually have the news as a news article, but just a general overview, and essentially what Warblog is doing to a larger extent, but also covering the historic things. I can remember seeing the website On War and thinking that was such a scammy site because it's basically just a cut and paste from Wikipedia. It's all the battles and it's all the wars and stuff from Wikipedia basically. And I thought, well, they're doing quite well because they had like 1 billion likes. And it's things like likes, I mean, Warblog, I don't think I have a like thing on there. I'm not even going to look. But on my Facebook page, it's got about 10 likes. I sort of know that because you need 30 before you can get your own unique domain. And I've got 10 in like 3 years. It's just silly. I mean, I don't know who presses these like buttons, but they certainly don't press them on my thing. And this is the thing I'm sort of in the back of my mind. I find it quite entertaining, really, because I sort of enjoy doing it. That's what I'm saying. I had this idea, and it seems to be working. But you just sort of read the news, and you sort of think, well, these people, they use Patreon, and well, this article I'm referring to is more realistic. But even there, it's talking about people that have got quite successful things. He talks. It's easy to feel like the failure of my Patreon is entirely on me. It's an anxiety most artists feel, actually. Am I actually any good? This paranoia is bolstered by the presence of wildly successful creators on the site, and there is a nascent market for Patreon advice in the way that Kickstarter birthed an industry of professional crowdfunding consultants. In a post on the official Patreon blog, 30 creators shared their secrets to success. Mike McHurg, who makes $3,000 a month to make the Ask Science Mike podcast, offered this: stop waiting to make the perfect thing. What you can release this week will always be what you can dream of releasing next year. I mean, that's just advice. I mean, to be quite honest, that's sort of how I go. I got a bit criticised for being sort of a quantity over quality sort of person on a recent Reddit post. And, sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not so good, the actual scenarios. But, I post whatever I can. But the thing is, if I ever get... if I ever get a patron, if you want to make my day, just become a patron. I mean, let's face it, it's not going to really be, unless I get thousands of dollars, it's not really going to be that exciting. I mean, I've seen someone else I know that does sort of comics, and they've got $6 a month. And I sort of think, wow, $6 a month, but no, $6 a month for committing your life to drawing comics is just silly. Even if I've got $10 a month, it doesn't really add up to much, and I'm not even sure you actually even get all that. I think there's all this stuff about you only get like 20% of it or 50%, I don't know. But anyway, so I've got my Patreon account now, so if you want to become a Patreon, and give me some money every month. Now, I'm not going to make content only stuff. I sort of I don't know who these people are, but I've got this sort of, I don't know, this idea that out there are some rich people, and I'm not talking about massively rich. I'm just talking about I think the internet portrays an image of everyone's quite equally poor, but that's not actually the case. I believe there's quite a lot of people out there that are sort of probably got a lot more money than they'd like anyone to know, and they're sitting around thinking of what they can do with it. And obviously you can give it to me in your Patreon. It's a bit of an odd one, because I'm not trying to sort of actually even solicit for money. That's not what this video is about. It's basically, I've got my Patreon, it's now up and running, and you can. But I sort of think that it's quite possible for someone. I have a couple of other businesses and things of that nature, and I've got customers that are involved with things. I don't necessarily know I should really sort of start talking about that, but I don't want to talk about explicit examples because I don't want to take the content away directly from what I do in this video. But they deal with essentially people that it's quite clear they've got more money than sense, and they just throw money away. It's not as though they're rich. I think the internet portrays rich people as being film stars, and they're just people that, they might have invested, conveniently in their youth, in property, or done well in business, or, for one reason or another landed on their feet and have quite a lot of disposable income. And then they're looking for places to sort of get rid of it, and obviously you can give some to me. But, that's not really what I'm trying to angle at, really. But what I'm saying is, it's quite possible for someone to, to actually decide, that they do that. It's, when people are starting to get old and die, they start to sort of realise that they can't take their money with them, and want to do things with it. I'm not really sort of trying to trying to sort of be a bit weird about it, or it just feels a bit weird. But the thing is, there are people out there that could sort of, that do have a lot of money, and they might go to other artists and people on Patreon, and the reason for giving isn't necessarily what they can get. That they're sort of thinking, well, maybe they remind them of when they were younger. Artists. I mean, you could have an artist, a successful artist. I don't know who. I'm not going to even try and guess, but someone that has made a lot of money through art, and they could go around giving money to people that strike them as being like little them, which is a bit sort of unfortunate for me, because I don't think there's too many really famous Hex and Counter wargame creators. No millionaire celebrity Hex and wargame, creators. But even so, that there could be, people that still fit the bill and sort of think, wow, this is a really good picture. I really want to support that. But I think you're probably more likely to get money if you create nice pictures of kittens and girls and pastel drawings and oil paintings and musical works and things that are family friendly. Definitely more scope for that. So I'm not deluded or anything like that in that sense. But I think in those instances, people will be quite willing to give over quite a lot of money. I don't really know what is going on, but at the same time, I'm pretty sure that a lot of people are just sort of sitting there with their Patreon accounts with nothing. I quite often look at the Patreon accounts, and that's one of the reasons I'm leaving mine open, because I know other people probably do. And like I say, I've seen one person, they get $6. You think, oh, $6. They're from I think from 2 or 3 Patreons, and it's like, oh, that seems like another world, but it's nothing really, is it? But someone could come along and just slap in 10,000 a month, and it makes you wonder really, because another thing I don't like to criticise too much, but you think about hang on, how does this all work with money laundering? I mean, what's to stop someone setting up a Patreon account and just money laundering? I'm surely that's what happens. I don't know. I mean, how do they stop that? I mean, I guess they have limits that after getting a certain amount per month, they have to do other security checks or something along those lines. I really don't know how that works, but I often suspect things like that. I mean, a Kickstarter as well. I mean, I did a Kickstarter about 2 years ago now, only because I saw it. I thought, oh look, it just happened to be about the same time. I thought, oh, I just happened to be doing this, and I actually did another Kickstarter I did some sort of other stuff, and I did them both at the same time just because I thought, oh, I could do that as well, and I didn't come up with it. I think actually I did them both, and then I realised you can only submit one at a time, so I didn't do the other one because I realised straight off I wasn't going to get anything. But Kickstarter's another one. You get these projects and they ask for sort of like $200,000, and they get it, and you sort of think, well, where's that money coming from? And there's got to be some sort of a lot of money laundering, and even if it's not money laundering, it's money cleansing. People sort of transferring money into projects that really don't have any viability, but they're politically appropriate for their own wallet, so to speak. So people just supporting people that have a political orientation. I use the word political in sort of broadest sense, because maybe it's just beliefs or even religion. Or just they strike them as being similar to them, but not really. Because of the product they've got, they just want to give money to this person at the exclusion of, say, other people that might have a better use for the money, etc., etc. So I think that things like Patreon and Kickstarter, I mean, from my point of view, they're just like no-brainer money laundering platforms. And the fact that I've never seen anything at this end, sort of, it doesn't support that, but it makes you wonder. You get these scenarios where you sort of see, well, there's not I don't understand why this person's getting any money, but they get a ton of it, and it's hard to sort of and there's I think that's the thing with YouTube. You get comparable platforms, people doing exactly the same thing. For example, there's a lot of video game platforms out there, people just trying to make money from YouTube, And now obviously it's changed a lot. I mean, I never tried to make money. I mean, I did when I very, very first started, but it came very apparent really early on that they don't monetize things like war. So, and I called it Desert War, or battles in the desert, or something else. But I gave up on that as well and just went the whole hog and just, called them what they are. And so I've never really sort of, I never even saw the dollar signs appear when I first started. I realised, I could click this button and get ads. Well, that sounds good, but that didn't last for long because my ads kept getting demonetized. So videos kept getting demonetized. So I never had any ads or any of that sort of monetization going on. But the thing is, there are other people that do video games, and you see them, and it actually frustrates me quite a lot because they have these sort of pictures, thumbnails, and they're always pulling these funny faces as though it's the most amazing thing on the planet. You sort of think, well, hang on, it's not. They're just playing a game. But I think what I'm trying to get to, there are some people doing that, and they have their own ways of doing it. And to be quite honest, I'm sort of figuring out some of the mechanisms that they're using. Like, they always seem to be super positive and like doing a lot of shouting. And one of the reasons I know that is I sometimes have suspicions and doubts and almost sympathies for people that have to live next door to those people and video gamers in general, because they seem like a noisy bunch, whereas X and counter games is far more subdued and quiet. But even so, these video gamers, they're all sort of chasing this sort of like, this prospect of becoming rich and famous from it. Video game, Olympics and all sorts of stuff. It's all over the place, and everyone's sort of chasing this money. But most people, I don't think, make anything. I mean, where does the money come from? And so even stuff like that, and even more so, where do the viewers come from? I mean, who are all these people? It seems like most of the people on YouTube are, it's like they're all chasing their own tail. They're all video creators, and there's very few people actually making the videos. Watching the videos, or just watching the videos for the sake of watching videos, etc., etc. I mean, I spend quite a lot of my time watching other sort of game things like Hex and Counter, but only because that's really what I'm into. So I'm into it, and I do my own videos, and I look at other people's stuff. So it's a bizarre market, and you sort of wonder where all this money comes from, or doesn't, etc. And I think when you start to look at it and analyse it, it's all a bit suspicious and a bit dubious as to its origins and its directions and the true motivations for why people are doing what they do, etc., etc. But anyway, that's just a general ramble. I mean, I'm not really trying to say too much other than I've got my Patreon account up now. And I think the question is that I leave you with is, will there still be $0 in 2 years' time? I mean, I think I've had it for about a year now, and it's still zero. It'd be interesting, really, because it has been down, and I was wondering whether or not anyone has actually tried to use it. I've not had anyone say, "Hey, dude, I tried to sort of like sign up on Patreon, but it says you're not accepting." Well, it doesn't even say that. It's quite cryptic, really. This user is not supporting any patrons at the moment, or whatever it said. So it'd be interesting, really, to see whether I actually get any. I mean, it would be a sort of. I think that these are the things that sort of not so much bug me, but I'm sort of aware of, or always semi-conscious of, and that's this. I don't even know what it's called. I think it's endorphin hits. They're things that when Facebook you get a like, you say, "Oh, that's really good." I suffer from that myself, but I mean, when I don't get many likes, I mean, I've got 10 on my Facebook page, but it's the same with YouTube. I mean, you create a video and you sit there and think, "Oh, how many views is it going to get?" Now, the bottom line is, I don't care, but at the same time, you do notice it, and it's undeniable. I think that you notice it, and you sort of want lots of views, and you sort of think, "Well, why isn't it getting any views?" Or think things like that. But what I'm saying is, if I get a patron, I mean, the thing is, I don't really, I'd be thankful, but I don't really want to start sort of, saying, "Oh, thank you for your $1 a month or $5 a month." I'd rather not have an account than sort of have to get sort of personal with people. But I mean, I'm pretty sure that there are people out there that for some reason or another are inclined to do that, and that's their own personal affairs, really. But the thing is, I think what I'm getting to is if I got $1 a month, it would be nothing really more than that endorphin hit. And then I'd be waiting for my next dollar. Well, why haven't I got another dollar? And it just becomes this numbers game. And to some extent, the whole internet is like that. It's just everyone wanting, well, I don't want to say everyone, because I think not everyone is as unaware of the situation. But I think there's this general drive for wanting more. Even if it's subconscious or subliminal, or you're unaware of it. So thinking, well, I just want to, I just want to sort of, have there been any, hits on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter? Quite often look at the Twitter thing and it says you have earned like 2,000 or 5,000 impressions this month, and it says earned. It doesn't say you had. You earned, as though you're earning impressions on Twitter by tweeting. And it all seems a bit base to me. I don't like that sort of the way it sort of motivates base instincts, which are almost sort of greed, really. And this Patreon thing is sort of something like that. But they also motivate, or they also give rise to other things like disappointment and the concept of failure. If you've got nothing, you sort of think, well, it speaks volumes. And there's always what I personally see as this Big Brother manipulation of people not wanting to make you look popular, because then it keeps you pacified and down by, well, you can't say, oh, I'm a popular YouTuber. I mean, I've sort of come across this notion or this idea before. Used quite often. I've seen on YouTube and news items, spoiled YouTubers think that they're special and go try to get into nightclubs and say, you don't know who I am, I'm a YouTuber, we have 1 million subscribers. And the thing is, I think there's definitely a sort of a buzz or a certain high to having people looking at you and looking at your work and being someone like a superstar. And I'm not sure that it's all really that that sort of good, really, because a lot of these people, they don't really understand the power that they wield or they're getting. But the Big Brother aspect I'm coming to is they deny other people that. You sort of think, well, hang on, I mean, what is actually going on in those algorithms that sort of push these people to the front and keep other people that are doing exactly the same thing way, way, way back? You get people, and you look at them, especially some of the younger people, doing sort of blogs on makeup and things like that. You think, well, the reason that they're doing those with such sort of, earnest effort is because they've got the momentum of having, say, a few viewers. They'll get, for example, I mean, I think on my YouTube blog I've got 38 viewers, and it's rubbish. 38 viewers, it's nothing. Not in the big scheme of things, but you sort of always, you're just sort of sitting there thinking, well, I want a few more. But if you've got a few more, and as that 38 grows, I feel as though, I've got an audience. I better start trying a bit harder. But I think if you were to get 100 a day, or you start to reach those heights where you've got sort of thousands of viewers, it's like the mother of invention. You've got a reason, you've got a motivation, a motivational factor to get more and to actually deliver a more quality product. To invest maybe in a better microphone or even a laptop that doesn't sort of make strange sounds in its own right. And and what I'm saying is quite a lot of these young people, they're making more of an effort, and they're basically chasing the snake, so to speak. Because they're getting a certain impetus and drive through that initial surge of interest. I mean, I've read another article that talks about, this, like, I don't know how old he was, but some child, something like a 10-year-old or something, started a YouTube channel, and their parents didn't know about it or something, but the child's becoming incredibly famous, and the parents didn't know what's happening. And to be quite honest, I don't believe that. I do think that YouTube and the powers that be are well on top of anything like that. Anyone that gets anything more than the very minimum is basically, as far as I'm concerned, is sanctioned by, I call it the police state. I don't want to get too political here, but YouTube or Facebook Central Command. I don't think they allow that, and I call it a sort of form of governance. And I think a lot of people don't realise that these sort of control platforms, exist in order just to stop people from accidentally becoming, incredibly famous. And this story of the 10-year-old becoming incredibly famous, I think it's just a setup. It's just like a false flag set up to sort of like just communicate this sort of, this sort of issue that can happen, because it could seriously affect people's lives, especially if they don't necessarily actually receive any financial return from it. I mean, people can become famous, and there's potentially an onus on that, and how that works socially, and how that affects your social position with your friends, and even at things like at school or work. And I don't think YouTube is sitting there just letting that happen, without actually being able to follow through on the full effect of that on a person's life, etc., etc. And I'm sort of half aware of that. And you sort of think, well, doesn't it make it pretty pointless? Because you sort of almost got to apply for a job with YouTube and say, oh, YouTube, well, I'll be really nice, and when you let me have lots of traffic, I won't upset anyone, and I'll do exactly what you say. I mean, it just becomes a bit sort of, a different kettle of fish, really. So, I mean, I'm just warbling here, really, and to be quite honest, I'm not sure I even want to put this video up now. It's just 30 minutes of rubbish. But it's just sort of, it comes down to all this thing of monetization and getting hits, and where the hits and the money, what's the difference? Well, obviously money you can extract and you can exchange for real things in the real world. But online it's sort of not a lot different. I mean, they're just numbers, and you're sort of thinking, well, I can get the numbers up and I can get the pounds up, and I get this from 0 patrons to whatever a month. I mean, I've always said that this sort of Hex Encounter war games, it's not a popular thing. It's not like playing that game Fortnite. I mean, who hasn't heard of Fortnite now? I mean, there was a time when I didn't know what it was, and I kept hearing about it, and I didn't have a clue what it was, and now I've got this idea that it's just this sort of like more comic stylized first-person shooter. You get a bunch of people on an island and they have to kill each other. I think that's the general gist of it, but it's sort of more family focused, in the sense it's family orientated. And I don't know what you can kill people with, but I imagine you can do silly things. But that's popular. So you can imagine that there will be YouTube video stars focusing on that. People with a Fortnite account or Fortnite focused channel, getting a lot of views, and Hex Encounter will never be like that, because it's just in comparison it's dull, and at its worst it's quite serious, especially my blog. But it doesn't mean it won't necessarily be popular or worthwhile or of interest to certain people. It's just never going to be sort of like wildly popular in a sort of like a viral sense that everyone's starting to look at all this grim stuff that's happening in the world, etc., etc. But anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. I'm sort of I didn't intend to really sort of open up like that, but I don't think I've revealed any sort of darker inner sort of non-war blog related sort of thoughts or inner feelings that betray or give light to other things that I might not really want to sort of be giving out. But I do feel I bared my soul a little on this sort of odd issue of internet success and earning money through your channel, and I think it's a bit of a sensitive thing, really. And so anyway, so here we can see I wouldn't say I've thrown the gauntlet down, but clearly you can see I've got 0 patrons, $0 per month, And you know, the gauntlet of the challenge is, let's see what it looks like in 2 years, because you know what, I don't think it's going to change. And I'm not saying disprove me. I just, you know, if you are familiar with Patreon, maybe you've got one yourself, and you can say, I listened to your video and I agree with you. I got one and I get nothing. And it's sort of like, how can it be worth $107 million? How can they be worth that much when they, you know, no one makes any money from it? 2% make more than the minimum wage. I mean, 2% even sounds to me like grossly. You know, 2% of Patreon creators who earn more than 2% is the number of Patreon creators who earn more than the federal minimum wage through the site. 2% does actually strike me as quite a lot. That's 1 in 50 people make the minimum wage, and 1 in 50 people on Patreon is earning the minimum wage, which, you know, considering that most people probably have other things, you know, like day jobs if they are on Patreon. You know, I can't imagine anyone in any industry, like a film star or an established musician, would have a Patreon account. You know, they would be getting grown-up sponsorship, things like that. But yeah, so we'll see in 2 years' time whether or not I'm in that 2% echelon of earning, you know, money through my Patreon account. But when you combine it with, you know, the fact that people sign up to play the game, and that does happen, people donate via PayPal, that has not happened. There are Google ads on the site itself, which generates about 2p a month, etc., etc. When you look at all the different revenue streams, you sort of think, well, it's quite a complex and convoluted picture, but each one potentially offers a lot. I mean, one of the reasons that I've got adverts on the site, and it was always my intention to monetize the site in part by adverts, and I know most people use ad blockers. I use them. I never see the adverts on my site, but I know they're there. I'm pretty sure they're there. I'm certain they're there, but I've never seen them, other than occasionally when I look on my tablet. And I think, what's all this crap on the side? Oh, it's my adverts. But you know, I mean, the thing is, I've got 400 games, over 400 games, and the whole idea really, you know, that's 430, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 438 games at the moment, and each one of those should be generating its own traffic. And I will tell you right now that this website gets no traffic. So you know, in theory, I would have thought by 438 games, I'd be getting a ton of traffic a day, which in its own right would have been generating a passive income through banner advertising. Nothing. You know, it's like Google just doesn't want to send me anything. I mean, it's virtually nothing. So much so that you can imagine the only people using Google are people searching for Warblog by name. You know, about once a day I'll get something that looks like someone has searched for something. You know, someone might have searched for, I mean, for example, if you go to Boko Haram government offensive, I'll just type the whole string here. Go to my search thing, see what happens. You see, I'm not there. You know, I mean, we seem to be going on to another almost tangible thing that I could almost rant about in all of this. I mean, I did put my site together, and I've got a fair, well, I have 100 results per page, and I mean, modern. Right, I've just typed in modern war. It's not on there, so I am not in the top 100 results. I'm not in any of the results, so I'm not coming up at all. But I've got 400 pages of this sort of stuff, and the whole idea of this game is a page. It's got Boko Haram government offensive in the title. It's got meta tags. It's got some sort of description. It's got a video, it's got lots of links, and it's got content, but nothing. You know, and in theory there's an advert just there. And you sort of think, well, what is actually happening? Is Google sort of deliberately, limiting my passive income through this site? And it's not, I've just thrown this together. If anyone's been following this, I've been doing this for now 3 years of fairly reasonably and consistently hard work. Nothing. There's no income at all. It's like a huge denial of service from Google. Why? That this is, it's just one of the things. But let me just try it on its own. I mean, that is such a Wikipedia, BBC, Stanford University, the Nigerian Bulletin, Reuters. It's all sort of like Google's best pals, Wikipedia and the news agencies, and small little independent companies like mine don't get anything. So I'm not really trying to sort of play any fiddles here. I'm just pointing out a fact that there are multiple revenue streams, and one thing that seems almost apparent is that none of them will ever achieve anything. And you sort of think, well, why? Well, why? I mean, you would have thought maybe. The thing is, a lot of it comes down to, it's the same thing I was just saying about, there's people just starting to earn loads of money accidentally from the bedroom on, with a YouTube channel. Well, when you're a mature adult, this is quite acceptable, and it should be, I think there should be a reasonable expectation that you can actually create 400 web pages, each which has its own unique content, and to actually get some return. And it is to some extent Google, which is the gatekeeper to information transfer. I mean, if all my pages were in Google and I was getting a relative return on that 400 pages, which as far as I'm concerned, based on my experience, would be hundreds of hits a day, because there's hundreds of pages of content, all with very varied text. I mean, even things like this. That is NGURU, main Suara. I mean, you might have someone sort of like restaurants in Azare, and they might find my site. If you type in Nigerian 41st. Nothing. None of the keywords, nothing. You can see that I'm doing a search, in 100 pages. None of my keywords are there, and that does actually upset me a little, because I have built this site with the intention that, well, even if it doesn't get a lot of players, that I will be able to generate a passive income from the sum total. And these are not cheap, tacky pages. I mean, I'm looking at that, and that looks like an interesting map. The colours are a bit odd. But the thing is, they actually quite appeal to me. It looks interestingly, and I know this game because it's so old. I've played it a few times. But it's sort of, there's no reason why this shouldn't be generating something. If Google can say, oh, well, it's not very good. Well, that's a matter of opinion, and Google has no right and no ability to determine the quality of this page. The quality of this page is actually quite high. It's a highly complex and very unique, hard to replicate map system that uses things that I've not seen. This drag and drop is actually unique. It's very difficult. I wouldn't say it's difficult to do, but I can never remember how it's done. But I do it. I've never seen anyone else do anything like it. And yet Google is clearly treating the entire site as though it's just all spam, as though there's no value on this page that warrants it delivering it up under anything. Even terms as specific as that, terms as specific as Boko Haram government offensive 2013. The things that we've just typed in. All of these things are sort of basically being trashed by Google. I mean, this site, as far as I'm concerned, should be getting a hell of a lot more traffic, and with that traffic would come users. People would think, "Oh, this is interesting." So I don't want to sound too sort of stressed out or hyped about it, because it is a big thing for me, but I'm so used to it now. But you know, when I sort of set this Patreon account up, I've got no intention or sort of thoughts in the back of my mind of anyone actually using it. But if I want to be getting what is rightfully mine, some sort of return in the search engines through the content that I published onto the internet, as you might expect, instead of Google serving everything up for keywords that I just will never appear for. I mean, it has Google blacklisted my site completely, in the sense that it's some kind of terrorist site because it has things that it deems unfit for human consumption. I don't know. I mean, it's about war. It doesn't, you know, there's no focus in it politically or anything. It's just a game. It's something that people have been doing for years, gaming things. You know, in the 70s we had games on the Third World War. You know, were all these people traitors? You know, people were playing the Second World War again. Are they Nazis? No, I mean, games are games and people play them, and this is the gaming platform. But it seems that Google has determined that it doesn't want to show any of my content anywhere. But if I was to getting what I would consider to be, you know, a significant return on people, even if they're accidentally coming to my site, instead of all these Wikipedias and mainstream media news outlets getting that traffic, they were coming through to mine. I might be getting people that say, wow, I really looked at, I saw your site on that Boko Haram government offensive. You know, I don't really like games, but you know, I'm from Nigeria, and you know, I really like the way you did that, and I want to you know, give you $5 or $10 a month. You know, that could happen, but it's not going to happen if no one is getting to the site, and the only people that really come to the site are probably people that have found this site through very complex and very sort of like off-world type environments where, you know, places like Reddit. I mean, to be quite honest, there's pretty much only Reddit that I can think of. Oh, obviously YouTube. You know, it gets sort of, I get about 10, 20 video views a day on YouTube, and you know, and I don't know where that all comes from, or even if it's even real. But you sort of think, well, that's a sort of a steady source of some interest. You know, they could be potentially people not interested in Hex Encounter games. They just stumbled on it because, you know, they are Nigerian, for example, or they are studying Nigerian history, etc., etc. But these people could come across the site and actually find the content interesting, but they could find it not just through YouTube and that sort of 10 or 20 a day, but through Google, which has got to be a far higher rate. And if they did, that, you know, this Patreon thing might start working. So to some extent, it's not the Patreon that doesn't work; it's this general exposure through Google that doesn't work. So anyway, I just wanted. I'm going to leave it at that because I've now gone 47 minutes, which is an insane amount of time considering I was just going to do a 2-minute video on Patreon to say it's up and running now. But you know, as I said, I don't really expect anyone to become a patron. You know, what I would, if there's anything that I do want, it's to actually get Google delivering the sort of volume of traffic that I imagine it should do. You know, I've got years of experience with websites and things of that nature, and I know that as far as I'm concerned that they're basically blocking the site. I mean, you can find it if you type in war blog, but that's about it. But I'm so sort of used to it that it ceases to become sort of the main issue that maybe sometimes I think I should make of it, really. But you know, there's no customer complaints section for Google in the United Kingdom. I'm going to be honest, I have considered going to the police and reporting them as a fraudulent enterprise and giving them quite a lot of information about my thoughts and feelings and what I consider to be circumstantial evidence on their sort of repression of, you know, content like mine. But would the police listen to me? I've gone through it in my mind. I thought, well, I'd have to go to the counter and I'd explain that I'd like them to arrest Google for fraud, and, or something along those lines, or discrimination, or illicit practices. You know, advertising, you know, a search platform that it's only search, it only provides their friends, but it gives the impression that it's paternalistic and for the good of all. I can't remember what the word is, but there's a particular word when you think that something is for the good of all, but it's not. And the expression on the policeman at the counter sort of said, well, what? I don't understand. And then you'd have to sort of, well, can I speak to someone in the police that actually has a sort of the higher level of understanding that might be required for, determining high level, corporate level fraud. Who in the police could even handle an investigation into Google and its suppression of, websites like mine? And even if they could, and then how would they even determine that there was anything unfair, an unfair practice, or something along those lines? I don't want to sort of really it's just something I've imagined. If you play hex and counter games, you think of all the options, you think of all the variants. It's not as though I've really I'm so irate and I believe that it's just a thought. I thought, well, hang on, I could do that. Because it's not just that. But it's a big thing. I could sit there and not get anything from Google for days. I'll get more traffic from YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and even that's just sort of like one a day. Quite often it's really just me visiting my site regularly. A number of people. There do seem to be a fair number of people who sort of come back on a daily level. I look at the little. This thing is actually quite useful. I have my own stats thing, but here, so I can look at that. And you get. In theory, that's probably me, but someone in Italy has been there today. And now this is not a very good example because sometimes you get quite big hits. But someone in Italy has been on there today, and they've probably looked at 3 pages. Someone from Canada. Someone from the United Arab Emirates, and those ones always interest me because there's a lot of Middle East stuff there, and the United States being at the bottom there is quite unusual. Usually they're quite high up in sort of 20s, 30s. But I sort of look at this and sort of think, well, it is getting some sort of traffic, but it's certainly nothing that warrants anything to get excited about. And so this big flat 0 is really not a surprise. There's nothing unusual about that. If that reflects, the whole thing for Warblog, that would be pretty much spot on, 0. I don't want to be sort of sound too grumpy, but if you know anything about how websites work and how in theory search engines work, you might imagine that for example, here are the keywords on this page. Africa terrorist wars online. Well, let's have a look at that. I'm not a terrorist, but that's the keyword I put in there, just a bunch of keywords. Paste. And I'm not in that top 100. Not there. So these keywords just simply not being put in there. But if you go to the front page, you can sort of see, if you know anything about the internet, I've put all these things in here. Now some of these are actually doing okay. For example, if I type in Hex War Games, this is a keyword, I'm pretty sure I might come up. There. And that's position 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So it's on the second page. So, I can't sort of say, I can't grumble or deny that I'm not getting something, but when you've got 400 pages, and you might hope that any one of these pages might generate nothing. These are quite specific terms. This has probably it's got the content, it's got it's even got words down here. Turkey war against YPG Kurds. Nothing. So I'm not there. So that's a key word that I put at the bottom of the page, which is quite often weighted by Google. I just put them there. I just go through the habit of doing that, etc., etc. But nothing. So it's clearly, not really ramping up to much. But so the bottom line is, I've got my Patreon account there. So if you're sort of thinking, gosh, it's too bad about Google, you poor loser, you might feel sorry for me and give me $1 a month. We'll make war games for money, sort of thing, for food, whatever. The bottom line is, obviously the site is about war, which is obviously a very sensitive issue, especially modern war and current wars. And I don't want to sound odd, but I'm from England, and basically I don't want to say too much, but I do travel a lot. So I'm very fortunate, in that we're not sitting there wondering where our next bit of water or food is coming from. There's always water in the tap, and a lot of people they don't even have that, and there's always so we've got it pretty good in a global sense, but it doesn't necessarily mean we don't have our Western problems, which are actually pretty important, because that's how humans tick. You can give them everything in the world, and they will just find the limits of their own contentness, and identify challenges and frustrations that can actually become as important as anything else. That's why I think that Greek is always pushing something up the hill. It's the struggle as opposed to anything to do with the accomplishment and achievement, etc. So anyway, feel free to subscribe to this Patreon thing or not, and I'll see you in 2 years for reflections and commentary on this 2-year gloves on the table challenge to reality. Okay, I'll speak to you later. In 2 years. Cheerio.